This podcast is proud to be part of the TalkSport Fan Network. TalkSport. Powered by fans.
Hi, and welcome to the last edition of the Away End for this season. I'm Craig Courtney, and I am this evening joined by Adam, and that's Adam Harvey from the Pinken podcast, which is for Norwich City. So I've got to start off by asking, why the Pinken?
Yeah, so it's a bit of a long story behind it. I'm part of the local newspaper in Norwich. Here is the Norwich Evening News and the Norwich Eastern Daily Press. The sports supplement, which used to be a sort of standalone paper back in the day, was printed on pink paper. It used to be just a sports paper on a Saturday night. Of course, long gone are the days of that now, unfortunately. But we're long standing now, still in digital form, and we're still in the papers, like a little supplement, like an 8 or 10 page supplement before games and after games, and then you get all the sports section during the week. So yeah, that's the reason behind it, and it's the name that's stuck. We kind of get it often with opposition fans where they'll say, "Oh, back in our city we used to have the green un or whatever." So
I've got to say, now that you've mentioned what it was all about, we actually had a paper called the Sports Argus, which was also printed on pink paper and was also one of those that I could never understand it, how they managed to get it printed and out so quickly after games and many other times when I'm walking around and somebody's coming up, do you want the Argus? And it's like, wow, that was quick. Yeah. So, yes. Okay, it explains a lot. So, I mean, you've mentioned there, obviously, what the name's about, but tell us a bit about the podcast, how long you've been going and, what you kind of get up to?
Yeah, so I finished university a few years back, and I've always been kind of a follower of. I've had a Norwich season ticket for sort of 10 plus years beforehand. Always wanted to get into the media side of football, and obviously, ideally, Norwich City. Following my club, and there's 4 of us. We are dedicated to Norwich City, home and away. We cover them, press conferences, games, everything of that nature, and then we've got the podcast as well, which we do usually on a Saturday night after home games and Sundays after away games, which we kind of break down the game and the general picture more generally for the club. Kind of, if there's anything off the pitch as well, we get into those matters. So yeah, lots of sort of good Norwich City content for our fans.
And by the sounds of it, involved with the club as well, which is absolutely fantastic. I mean, we've been going for 13 seasons now, but the one difference is the fact that, from a club content perspective, it's something that it's fair to say Birmingham are branching out even more on at the moment. So we haven't had too much involvement, but hopefully plenty of things to come. So we come to the last game of the season, and wow, well, what a season for both clubs, really. I mean, Norwich, for me, even though I know you can say on points it's not guaranteed, but on goal difference, I think you're in that playoff spot now, and really that last spot for in there against West Brom and Hull, I think are really going to fight that one out. Birmingham in a dire position, 3rd from bottom, point behind the team, 4th from bottom, and we have to go into the game and obviously win. But I mean, let's go back to the start of the season. I mean, what was your thoughts? What were your aspirations? And did you think that Norwich would end up in the playoffs, or was you looking for more?
Yeah, it's been a bit of a sort of roller coaster season more generally. If you go back to the summer, we started last season, or the end of last season, really poorly. Just 1 win in 11. David Wagner was kind of under immense pressure during the summer to get a quick start. Some of the additions they brought in were much more experienced players that maybe had the championship nous, I suppose, the likes of Ashley Barnes and Shane Duffy, that have been around the block a bit to maybe help some of our younger players in terms of trying to progress in the championship this season. I think if you went around the fan base and asked them where they thought Norwich would be, it'd probably be anywhere from 1st to 24th. It was kind of one of them where we didn't really know what to expect. I think the club internally felt they would be in around the top 6, but I think given kind of the sides that had dropped down from the Premier League, we knew it was going to be much tougher. We were sort of not in that bracket of clubs like we were last season, where the expectation is that you should be promoted. Mm-hmm. We started the campaign really well. We were in and around the top 2 kind of by the time the first international break came around. Then went and beat Stoke the other side of that, and everything looked really rosy. And then we had an awful run of form where we won just 1 game in 9, and funny enough, that was against Birmingham. So it was a pretty grim run, and I think David Wagner, particularly kind of around that sort of early November period, was under immense pressure. They lost 3-1 at home to Blackburn, and that's probably up there with the most sort of apathetic and frustrated I've seen Carrow Road. The fans were all leaving after 60 minutes, which, you know, anyone that's been to Carrow Road knows, you know, it's a sold out ground. The loyalty is there from our fans, and it felt really dark. And yeah, and that was really, you know, difficult. I know, kind of maybe from an outside view, some other fan base will look at us and think that's maybe a sense of entitlement, given kind of the roller coaster ride we've been on in terms of Premier League. But I think when you're got the players we've got and sort of some of the quality they've got, and we knew that this squad was capable of much better. It was a difficult period, but to David Wagner's credit, to be fair, he got a little bit longer. Many of the fans felt he didn't deserve it, but he's kind of lucky that we had a change of sporting director, and our previous sporting director departed. The new one arrives, and he kind of said, I need to get my feet under the table and just assess the squad and the management more generally. And that kind of bought him time. And ever since then, we've not really looked back. We went to Cardiff. We were 2-1 down. I think at that point, on 80 minutes on the clock, David Wagner's gone. We're all ready for who's going to be the new manager. And then we went and turned the game around, 1-3-2. And then from there on, it's been 2024 most generally. I think we've lost 3 games in the whole of this year. One of those is a bit controversial due to a red card. So there are 2 defeats really that I sort of stand out, were against Leicester and Leeds. So there's no sort of shame in losing to those 2. So yeah, I think it's been a mental season. If you'd have said we'd be in the top 6 around November time, I probably would have laughed and shut this laptop down and said goodbye, because it just wouldn't have happened. But yeah, here we are, and yeah, it looks like we're going to be there.
And you know, I'm not taking a mick here. I know this might hurt a little bit, but you're very, very close rivals. I've got to say, I am amazed at the season that Ipswich have had. You know, I look at Leicester City and I think, you know, they came down from the Premier League. They kept the nucleus of the squad that they had. They were, start of the season, the team that everybody knew for me would be top 2. And actually, I tipped them at the start to be the champions, which they've obviously gone on to do. But never in a million years did I call Ipswich. And you know, as a Norwich fan and being in the position where you're fighting for it, I mean, how does it feel to have them doing what they've done and on a shoestring budget, really, because they've come up with the same squad, really, and just they've put a couple of decent players in there during the summer, but they really haven't spent too much. So I guess the $1 million question, does it hurt? And how do you feel about the potential that they are, you know, top 2?
Yeah, it's quite an alien feeling, really. I mean, kind of when I first started supporting Norwich, sort of mid to sort of 2000s, and we were kind of maybe the side that were looking at them and with a little bit of envy. They had a Marcus Evans coming in with lots of money, and we got relegated to League One. And for the early days of me supporting Norwich, they were sort of the side that you kind of, you know, had that sort of frustration with it. You know, they were the side sort of ahead of the curve. We were the ones that were sort of tailing behind. But from then onwards, under Paul Lambert, we saw promotions back to the Premier League, back-to-back titles, or not titles. We got promoted through the Championship in second place, but back to the Premier League. And from then on, it's been a roller coaster journey. We've had the upper hand. They haven't beaten us even this season in their sort of peak season, which I suppose maybe adds a little bit of humour to it. They haven't actually beaten us, which is quite hilarious to think. It's been 15 years now since the last time they did beat us, which is 2009. So lots has happened in that time. We kind of bring it up often. You know, we sort of have this conversation as Norwich fans of things that have happened since Ipswich last beat Norwich. Things like the iPad, the Olympics, all these various things have happened. It's been pretty crazy. But yeah, looking at it now, I mean, yeah, credit's where it's due. You know, they deserve to get promoted. They've been the second best side by far. You know, at times they probably challenged even Leicester for pushing for the title on a shoestring budget. You know, Kieran McKenna is an absolute mastermind in terms of what he's done, and he's clearly a coach who's going to go to the top. I think, you know, probably eventually once he's established Ipswich, if he can, in the Premier League, or even if they come straight back down, his stock's going to be higher than them, and maybe there'll be clubs, you know, at the top end of the Premier League that will look at him as a future manager. I think, you know, there is that little bit of envy, but by the same token, we've got this opportunity in the playoffs, which could mean that both East Anglian clubs are in the Premier League. And I think that's probably, if you speak to most Ipswich fans and Norwich fans, is something that we'd love to see both sides in the Premier League. And East Anglian derby that means probably even more than these ones in the Championship. So, yeah, bring it on, really. I think if they get there, you know, it'd be interesting to see how they get on. And hopefully we can kick on next season either way. But, yeah, I think hopefully for us, we can both be there maybe.
Well, I mean, I'll come away from the pain of talking around that, because I mean, we're a long way off seeing that from a Birmingham position. But I agree with what you're saying. You know, you always, much as the rivalry's there, one of the things you always want to say is you want to play your local rivals and your closest team in the top league. You know, it's great when you can play each other in the Championship, but the Premier League, everybody wants to be there. And when you do have those derbies, as we have found between Birmingham and our friends the other side of the city, whose name I will not mention, we do have some great games, and they you know, they're missed at the moment. So hopefully we can get back in and around it as well. I mean, we go into the game the weekend. Obviously, I'm hoping that your manager does what he did last time we played them, and his team were pushing for a playoff position, because if I remember rightly, he rested 10 of his 11 first team players last time it happened at Birmingham. I'm hoping he does exactly the same at the weekend. But we'll go on to see. But I mean, it's not pleasant reading from a Birmingham perspective. I always look at the past 5 games, and I can just say it's 5 wins for Norwich. You know, in fact, your record over Birmingham is phenomenal. Really, it's we're pretty much a bogey team. I think actually one of the last times that we've actually had a result and beat you was actually the playoff final at Cardiff, which will come into the conversation a bit later on. Surprise, surprise. But no, I mean it's not pleasant reading. The last time was obviously the 2-0 win, I think, back in September at Carrow Road. So going into this weekend, it's going to be tough. And like I say, I hope we see a few rested players. But I mean, I mentioned Cardiff there, but there are games that Birmingham and Norwich have had in the past. Does one in particular stand out for you? I mean, you can guess already what mine is, but which one stands out for you and why?
Ooh, that's a good question. I think maybe to be fair, the opening day of the season, as the season we won the title under Daniel Farker, Ono Hernandez, formerly of Birmingham, of course, scored a late equaliser, which sent the away end delirious. I think it was a game we'd been sort of on the back foot for quite a lot of, and he came on, and that probably sparked what was in the end a pretty magical season. I know it was only a 2-2 draw, but I think probably given all the context wrapped around it eventually and what happened that campaign, I think that's probably one that, you know, for me, sticks out, you know, pretty vividly in the memory as a pretty good one.
I mean, I've mentioned it already, but mine obviously is the playoff final. For many reasons, not just the fact of the results and the way things were, but I think it's the fact that Cardiff itself was just a sea of blue and white one side, yellow and green the other. But actually, you know, as both sets of fans, we were almost celebrating with each other because we both had phenomenal seasons. I can always and still do stick by one of the songs that Birmingham was singing across the day, which always made me laugh, which was "Who Are It's a Budgerigar," rather than obviously the Canaries. Yeah. And I always remember seeing Jasper Carrott being carried through the centre of Cardiff on people's shoulders as he was going to the stadium. So it was a brilliant day overall. One where I was right behind the goal, middle tier of that stand, so I saw all the penalties and obviously was there doing the celebrations at the end of it. But I'll never forget it for the other reason, which was the roof was closed, so the atmosphere was just electric. And actually, for me, Cardiff as a stadium is better than Wembley, but you know, some people will say no to that. But I do believe it really does form a great place for a great atmosphere, and one that I'll never forget. And obviously brought the good times to Birmingham at the time. So we've mentioned obviously past games. We've talked about what's upcoming, but a little bit of a challenge for you. So we've had numerous players, and actually the list is quite large over the years, that have represented both Birmingham and Norwich, either on loan or permanent moves. So I just wondered, can you name 5 that have represented both clubs?
Yeah, Nathan Redmond's the first one that comes to mind. Of course, a youth product of Birmingham, came to Norwich in the Premier League, and I think from there on kicked on and eventually obviously moved on to Southampton. But for me, he sticks out as one of my favourite Norwich players. He scored the goal at Wembley in the playoff final against Middlesbrough to put us 2-0 up, and that moment will live with Norwich fans forever. Much like he scored in the semi-final that to put us 2-1 up against Ipswich Town in the second leg as well. So I think he's probably one of the ones that sticks out. Going back maybe to slightly more current players, obviously John Ruddy in between the sticks for Birmingham at the moment. Made kind of his breakthrough, I suppose, at Norwich in terms of a goalkeeper playing in the Premier League, got an England cap while he was on the books at Norwich City. Yeah, a really top pro, and I think he still lives in the city and has got pretty good connections. His son is part of Norwich's academy, so yeah, lots of good ties there. Ono Hernandez, I of course mentioned a little while ago for the goals that he scored. Scored against Birmingham, of course, at St Andrews last season, the late winner as well. So he's tends to show up actually in his games.
Loved him at St Andrews. Got to say, his pace and tenacity was absolutely superb, and it was a shame we could never strike a deal to get him on a permanent move because he did enjoy that period whilst he was there. But yeah, he was a killer when he did score those goals.
Yeah, I believe Jonathan Grant is a former Birmingham central defender. Yeah, so formerly Norwich on loan. So that's one that maybe less memorable in terms of it was an era of Norwich relegation to League One, and he was sort of part of the defence that was a bit ropey back then. But yeah, he sticks in the memory, and I suppose a slightly more obscure one, maybe Przemysław Placheta, departed Norwich quite recently. I know he had a loan spell at Birmingham, not many appearances. I think injury blighted him a little bit, but by all accounts had a pretty good time when he was playing sort of in and around the August period.
Indeed, and I mean, there's actually a raft of players that go back over the years as well. So, obviously you've mentioned Redmond. He was top of my list, and I was, Brummy through and through, seeing his breakthrough and his first goal for the club, and also seeing him scoring the goals in Europe is something that I will never forget. But going back through the years, we've had a few rapid players that have swapped both sides. So one of the fastest players for me that ever turned out for Birmingham, Louis Donowa, obviously represented both clubs. Striker as well, Paul Pescasolido was there. We had Matt Jackson, Tony Cottee. There's one that I'd totally forgotten about, really. How can we forget Stevie Bruce? Obviously, representing both. You've mentioned Placheta there and Hernandez as well, and Ruddy. But also in the playing squad at the moment, I believe he was with you on loan, but Alex Pritchard.
Yeah, he was actually permanent at Norwich. Yeah, he was here for a couple of years. Yeah, signed from Tottenham after he had a really good spell at Brentford and kicked on. To be fair, done pretty well first season, and then maybe his head got a little bit turned by a move to the Premier League in Huddersfield, and then departed us for quite big money. So I think in the end we probably got a good deal out of that.
And other players, Cole Lafferty, albeit wasn't very long with Birmingham. James Vaughan, Tom Adeyemi. Obviously, we had from you. Cameron Jerome, how can we forget Cam Jerome? And then I was really looking into this. I didn't realise a name that has come up on plenty over the past few weeks of these when I've been discussing it with fans. But Lee Camp, didn't realise that Lee Camp had actually played for Norwich. Martin Taylor, friend of the show, such a gentleman. Couldn't wish to meet a nicer guy, really. Simon Charlton, obviously, as well, representing both clubs. And then finally, two others, but going back over the years, but an absolute legend for you guys. Didn't really stay and do too much at Birmingham, but was Chris Sutton.
Yeah.
And then finally, a legend for Birmingham was Keith Birchin. And obviously, he moved across with yourselves as well. So we've had a proper raft and some really good players. Strangely, though, never had a manager that's been at both clubs. And it's one where I'm thinking over the championship season and the people that I've spoken to this year, there's been quite a few where we have had overlaps, but not even in the coaching.
Just thinking, was Chris Hughton not a Birmingham manager?
I suppose yes, Chris Hughton was Birmingham manager, but was he at Norwich for long?
He was there for 2 seasons, so yeah, he kept us off in the Premier League first campaign round, and then second time round got sacked about 5 games before the end, which I think most Norwich fans maybe look at it as if we'd have kept him, we might have stayed up. Unfortunately, they went down the sort of caretaker route with Neil Adams, who was formerly a Norwich player, and it didn't quite work out and ended up getting relegated. But yeah, that just kind of sprung in my head then we were talking about managers, I suppose.
And I've got to say, my bad there, because thinking about, and we were talking there about Nathan Redmond scoring his goals out in Europe, but obviously Christian Hughton was our manager at that point in time, and for me was dealt he was dealt a wrong card really with Birmingham. He should never have been in the situation that he was in with the squad that he had and that he took over. You know, we had a European run where we only just missed out on qualifying from the qualifying stages of the Europa League. We were the first team at that point in time to go to Bruges and actually beat them on their own ground from an English point of view. And then we got into the playoffs that season as well. And you know, it was a shame because he did that on a shoestring, and then he got to the end of the season, and there was like, you know, we can't offer you anything else. So I couldn't blame him at that point in time for actually walking away as he did. But I do think that, you know, we missed an opportunity, but then that was the beginning of our downfall as a club and where our owners went. So we come into this weekend then. Arguably, Birmingham's biggest game for seasons. You know, this is our tide turning situation. You know, we are third from bottom, a point away from fourth from bottom. We have to win the game unless Plymouth take an absolute pummeling against, I believe, they're playing Hull. But it's at Plymouth. So, you know, unless we take 3 points, then we are down. And we've been in precarious positions over the past few seasons, but we've always had an opportunity where actually part of it has been in somebody else's hands. This time around, it's solely in ours. And we've got a squad that they're not, you know, brilliant. They are grafters when they need to be, and they've shown us in some of the games that we've played recently that they can do it. So Coventry is a standout game. We didn't just beat Coventry, we made them look mediocre, and this is the team that took Man United to penalties in the FA Cup semi-final that were pushing for playoff positions. So we can do it. To me, it's always about the teams that have got, you know, around us and how they turn out as well. But the other thing is the fact, you know, we have had multiple games this season where we've had sellouts at St Andrews at Noyer Park. This time around is no different. We've actually won each of those games where we've had a sellout. I think the atmosphere is going to be amazing. It's fair to say, I know people that are in pubs from like 8:30, 9 o'clock in the morning on Saturday. Others like myself will stroll in probably about 10 o'clock. And then afterwards, it'll be, right, are we drinking to commiserate or are we drinking to celebrate? And obviously for me, I'm desperately hoping it's a celebration. But I mean, are you coming yourself? Are you coming down to Brom and what's your thoughts regarding the game, and who should we look out for on the day?
Yeah, I'll be there. Quite looking forward to it actually. And I think there's lots on the line for both teams. Maybe less so for us, as you kind of mentioned at the top of the show, in terms of playoffs is almost there. But I think in Norwich fans' mind, there's been times where goal swings has maybe come into play at different points and it's gone against us. So I think even though it would have to be an 8-goal swing, it still feels a little bit. It still feels a little bit nervy, maybe, you know, sort of in our head that we could take a 4-0 defeat and I'll go and win 4-0 at Plymouth and then it all, you know, unravels and we miss out. So I think we'd rather try and come there and get a point. I don't get the impression that David Wagner will rest players. I think it will be very much we've got a job to do here, lads. We need to mathematically secure it. And obviously there's the chance to finish 5th or 6th, and it depends on if we fancy playing Southampton or Leeds. I think most fans would probably rather play Southampton, which would lend itself to finishing 5th, which we're in pole position to do at the moment. So it's just a case of us matching West Brom's result, and that will pretty much do the job. So, yeah, in terms of star man, I think Gabriel Zara in the midfield is probably the key player. 25 goal contributions this season, 13 goals, 12 assists. Yeah, he's a different level. He's a Premier League player in waiting, whether that's with Norwich next season, which, of course, from our persuasion, we're all hoping that's going to be the case. But if it's not, then he'll be somewhere with a side. Then I'm really excited to see what he could do in the top flight. Brought him in from Sao Paulo a couple of summers ago now and struggled to adapt a little bit initially under Dean Smith, which didn't really work out. And then David Wagner's come in, and the 18 months he's been here, I mean, he's been on a different level. He gets better and better every single game. If you watch some of his goals back from this season, the technical ability he's got, he can shoot from range. You can anywhere not in a box. He'll take players on and find the bottom corner. I think he's probably up there for me in terms of pure technical quality, probably in like maybe the top 5 players I've seen play for the club in my lifetime, and there's some pretty good names on that list. The likes of Wes Houlihan, James Maddison, Emi Buendia, who are all quality players in their own right. But for me, he's right in that elite club now. So I think he's probably the one that if you can nullify him, you probably nullify much of Norwich's sort of goal output and even sort of the players that can find the spaces then to maybe hurt you. But yeah, I'm sort of on the fence. I could see it being a nervy game maybe, and it's kind of might be defined by a few individual bits of quality from either side, and that might see a win on either side.
I mean, I didn't realise that, Norwich being where they are, I expected their away form to actually be a hell of a lot better than the form table actually shows. And I think, if I remember rightly, fourth from bottom as far as away form is considered. And I mean, really, that just shows two things: that you've been phenomenal at home and very hard to beat, but also, whilst you haven't had the wins, you haven't really also had too many losses. I think there's been more draws than anything, hasn't there? So, I mean, I can't say anything about away form. Birmingham have won 3 games all season away from home, and we've been atrocious. We couldn't even beat the team that's been relegated from bottom and the team arguably that will be second bottom, which is Huddersfield. So I can't say anything about away form. But, I mean, that to me, that is probably the one thing that I will take as a positive away from what we're up against, because we are going to be up against a very good team. We're going to be up against a team that wants to go into the playoffs with not just that, but momentum. They want to keep the results being continued. I'm just hoping that you have again one of those off days on Saturday, and that we can get a result. But it's going to be tough. I mean, from a Birmingham position, firstly, I couldn't even tell you how that team will set out, because it's changed each game that we've played over the past 4 weeks. So how we're going to set up, I don't know. The one thing I can say is you will see Stansfield playing up front. And he is the guy that, for me, when I look at what happened last week at Huddersfield, at the end of the game, there was a lot of booing. There was a lot of "you're not fit to wear the shirt" that came from the Birmingham fans. And Jay Stansfield was uptight. He was angry. He actually reacted. One of the only players that I saw a reaction from. He took that, but he apologised. Now, to me, what I actually want them to do is I want them to use that as ammunition going into this on Saturday, and actually saying, do you know what? We might not have had the best season, but that's wrong what you said. I am fit to wear this shirt. And I think he'll have a lot to be involved with on the day. If we do set up as we have done before, we're going to be a sole striker. And you'll see, 5 across the middle. It is a Gary Rowett formation that he likes. However, for me, stick by it. I love 4-4-2. You can't beat it. I know there's not a lot of teams that play at the moment, but when you get a decent 4-4-2 and the 2 attacking wing backs, it's probably the best that you'll see a football team play, and to me the strongest that they see them do it as well. So I'm hoping they set up that particular way, but again, we'll see. We got mentioned as well. Got a full house at St Andrews. It will be bouncing. It will be rocking. The fans will get behind them. The fans will stick with them as long as they're trying. But I do fear that if we concede a goal, it'll go very quiet and it'll be very hard to get things back. But I'm hoping it's not the case. Now, I normally do a prediction. For the game, but I'm not going to. And I didn't on our podcast either on Monday, because we've all said the same thing. Superstition kind of kicks in. So I can't do a prediction, but I can ask you for one. So what do you think on Saturday? And be brutally honest. You're going to relegate us or not?
Yeah, I'm kind of my head's kind of got a few different results. I could see all 3 events really, but I think Norwich drawing away games has been a sort of consistent theme really of this season more generally. I mean, our away form's generally been much better in 2024, but we've still kind of got it in us to only pick up a point on pretty much a lot of occasions away from home. And I could see that, given that's kind of what it would take to mathematically secure playoffs. I think in my head, given everything that'll be around the game, I could see that being the case again. I think it'll be a good game between 2 sides. Obviously, we'll want to try and win the game. I could see a high scoring affair as well. So I think my head's saying 2-2, which I know probably from Birmingham end is not an ideal result at all, and probably would see you down. But for us, that would be a enough to secure playoffs, and then we can all kind of look forward and look ahead to what's potentially on the horizon for Norwich in terms of semi-finals, which I'm sure is an exciting prospect. But yeah, I think I'm afraid to say it, but yeah, 2-2 draw.
You know what though? I'd take a 2-2 as long as Plymouth gets spanked by 5. So, but I mean, no, it's going to be a very nervous day. The one thing I can say is, whilst the fans are up for it, I haven't met one Birmingham fan that's not nervous about what's going on. And actually, some people already think that it's done, dusted, and that this will be the season we go down. We desperately hope not. The owner will be there, I believe, so he's going to be in situ and wants different things to turn around. Either way, as it comes to the end of the season, for yourself, I hope that, the playoffs is a success again for you, that you can get yourself back into the Premier League, and that, like you mentioned, you've got that East Anglia Derby that you can look forward to. And I hope that, obviously, Birmingham stay in the division and can build moving forwards and emulate ultimately what Norwich have done, which is getting a strong squad together and having enough about them to be in the playoffs or thereabouts to take us back to the Premier League in the future. So thank you for your time. Good luck with the playoffs. I can't say good luck for the weekend because, to be honest, I don't mean it.
No, that's fair enough.
It's one where, for a change, I will say, good luck with everything moving forwards. I hope you do get through the playoffs and get, like I say, back into the Premier League. But please have that worst game of the season, and if you can have a word with any of your players and tell them to do exactly the same, it'd be appreciated on Saturday. But look, enjoy your time down and across, I suppose is the best way to put it, in Brom. Hope you have a good day and enjoy it. And thank you again for your time. Much appreciated. And
thank you, Craig. Appreciate it.